my next guest for our fireside chat about brand safety and podcasts. So thank you for joining me. Give a round of applause to Verwilghen, please. We could just have the holding slides updated. Perfect. In case you're just arriving now, I'm Sagar. I'm the reporter for The Media Leader, the chair for today's session. Delighted to be joined by Verwilghen, who's VP Head of Commercial Partnerships and Strategy for EMEA and APAC at AdsWizz. It's quite a job title. We've got 20 minutes, or about 15 minutes for our discussion, unpacking brand safety in podcasts, which we briefly mentioned in the previous session. So thank you for joining me for this
Thank you, Ella.
Okay.
So I think interesting to see is that brand safety wasn't very successful in this morning's poll, but it already came up a few times in the first couple of panels. Mm-hmm. So I think it's still an interesting topic to cover. In terms of brand safety, I think we need to look at it, who's interested in brand safety? I think we need to look at it from an advertiser standpoint, but as well from a publisher standpoint. Advertisers want to make sure they can control where their messages are ending up, but publishers are also brands. They also have an image that they want to develop. They're also trying to grow their audience. So it is important as well to make sure that they can control what type of ads are ending up on their content. And then I think more widely in digital audio, there's a lot of different types of content. We're talking about music streaming, web radios, radio talk shows, podcasts, audiobooks, text-to-speech transcription from articles that are being made available in an audio format. We're talking more and more about in-game audio as well. We're talking about a lot of CTV right now, like we're able to deliver audio messages in a video environment. I think brand safety needs to be addressed in different ways based on the audio type that is being consumed.
Yeah, definitely. And a bit of context, I guess. So obviously brand safety's come up, as you mentioned, in some of our previous sessions. Also in a recent AdWanted audio survey of UK media agency planners and buyers, 80% said brand safety was either very important or important in podcast advertising. So it is kind of top of mind for people who are making these plans for advertisers. And so when we talk about brand safety in audio, and as you mentioned, it's such a wide area, we tend to lean in specifically on podcasts and talk about brand safety and podcasting specifically. Why do you think that is?
So I think there's different reasons to that. First of all, podcast is about spoken words, much more active listening. Like there is brand safety on music. Some brands may not be willing to be associated with, hip hop music where, kind of the lyrics are a little bit violent. But I think when it comes to podcasts, it's spoken words. It can be associated to radio talk shows as well. I think it's basically spoken words in general. That's one thing that makes it more important in terms of brand safety and being associated to the actual topic that is being covered. Second is that hosts are unpredictable. We've seen it with some hosts, and which makes the success of some of these hosts as well. Mm-hmm. But advertisers may see that as a risk in terms of brand safety. I'd say another reason is that anyone can create a podcast and anyone can just post it on the major podcast platforms, which can be perceived as a lack of control for advertisers on where these ads are going to end up. Lack of data is another one on podcasts. In the way podcasts are being consumed, they're being consumed on third-party players, major podcasting platforms that don't always share data. So advertisers may see that as kind of knowing the audience less good and being less comfortable to advertise on these. I think another reason is also the current environment that we live in. There's a lot of topics in the news. We're getting out of a pandemic. There's all the topics around climate change. There's geopolitical tensions, which leads to more content being created around these topics. And as a result, advertisers may not be willing to advertise or being associated to such such topics. And then lastly, I would say podcast is about emotions, is about creating a community. It's about that special relationship between the host and between the audience. So this is, I think, a great opportunity for advertisers because it's an opportunity to deliver impactful messages. They know the audience is actively listening. It's really impactful for the listener. But at the same time, when it comes to brand safety, it represents a bigger risk as well in case a message is delivered in content that a brand doesn't want to be associated with. So I think all these reasons explain why for podcasts, brand safety is probably a little bit more important than in the rest of the digital audio content types.
Interesting. And so obviously technology has been changing and evolving. How has it been evolving specifically for podcasts to address brand safety? And I know a lot of, say, agencies and clients will buy podcasts at a vertical level or a show level, maybe not at an episode level, but how has technology changed to address this kind of concern?
So there's a few things when it comes to technology and how technology can address brand safety issues and concerns. The first thing is the industry standards. There are some standards. It's a nascent. It's an industry that is shaping in podcast. There are some standards when it comes to podcast genre, podcast category. There's RSS feed attributes that can be used as well for targeting or anti-targeting purposes. We're talking about genres like news, comedy, politics, true crime. All these genres can be targeted or targeted away from. And then when it comes to the RSS feed attributes, it gives the advertisers the ability to identify what podcast shows have controversial or explicit content, and they can target away from that. I mean, not all platforms out there allow for targeting and anti-targeting based on these data signals, but that's kind of what the industry has already created in terms of standards. But I'd say that's not enough. If an advertiser doesn't want to be associated with explicit content, for example, they would just not address true crime. While true crime is quite popular, it's quite an important opportunity for brands as well. So there's technologies that go one step further, and we're talking about the transcription technologies, which is basically being able to read the audio content, transcribe it into text, identify keywords, extract keywords, being able to target or target away from specific keywords. But again, I think that technology has limitations as well, because it's not because a keyword is coming up in a podcast that specifically talks about that topic. And
it might be around sentiment rather than the keyword. It's like
exactly
in digital previously.
Yeah, exactly. And just an example of that, if the word shooting is appearing in a podcast, could be associated with crime, guns, violence, etc., while the podcast may actually be talking about football,
film,
basketball, film, and which would be totally fine for the advertiser. So this is where technology goes one step further from just extracting keywords and being able to target or target away from keywords. And several industry players have developed contextual targeting tools, and there's different names to that. There's audio intelligence, AI transcription technologies, contextual targeting technologies, etc. And this is going one step further. It's analyzing the true contextual essence of a podcast show by analyzing the repetition of keywords, how keywords are being associated with each other. And this really allows advertisers to see exactly what a podcast is talking about and if they feel comfortable advertising on a specific content or not. So I think technologies are starting to be developed, are starting to be stable. Everyone is kind of developing its own at a certain point in time. I think that there will need to be some kind of standardization across all these technologies.
Scalable solution.
To make it more scalable. And what's interesting with all these things that are currently available is the fact that they can be combined. And some platforms allow advertisers to combine targeting and anti-targeting of some of these technologies that are available. Just an example of that, if a brand, around true crime, if a brand doesn't want to be associated with any content related to violence and guns and war or whatever, but they are okay to deliver messages in true crime because it's about storytelling. It's a story. It's not really about violence and news around violence. They can decide in certain platforms to say, I don't want to be associated with violence and guns and whatever, except for true crime, where I accept and, so these can be combined just to make sure that they can also tap into the wider podcast opportunity and not just being excluded from a lot of content out there that would be interesting for their brands as well.
And for publishers, that means less unmonetized inventory. And
exactly.
All of that. I wanted to turn the conversation out in terms of what a trend that we've been seeing is the increasing share of programmatic on podcast advertising revenues. It is a growing part of the podcast market. What do you think about brand safety and programmatic? Can they coexist, or is it a contradiction?
So there's the topic around the perception of programmatic, and this comes from the past and from other formats, from what happened in display and in video. I think for advertisers, programmatic is often perceived as lower quality, is being associated to open marketplace. We don't control where the ads are going to end up, on which website. And lower quality means cheaper CPMs, lower prices. And then from a publisher standpoint, I think programmatic also means loss of control of the sales processes. Some salespeople may fear that programmatic will steal their job because platforms will replace them and everything will be...
might steal journalist jobs.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. And I think that fear doesn't need to happen. There will still need to be some kind of support and in programmatic as well. It's not a loss of control. An advertiser can advertise programmatically while still keeping control and ensuring brand safety. And when it comes to podcasts and digital audio in general as well, we prefer to talk about automation than programmatic because it's got less that perception of lower quality. It's just about making the ad buying process more efficient, but still being able to leverage technology and leverage, there will be relationships between the sellers and the buyers still for programmatic as well. People will still be needed. It's just not, it's just about automation and efficiency, and I think that's an important thing to note. I think in podcasting, programmatic will bring scale, and this is what advertisers need. And someone talked about it earlier today, is that advertisers today like to buy these big shows that they know what they're buying, they know the host, they know the environment, they feel comfortable about it. But these big shows probably represent 15% of the total podcast inventory out there. So that basically means that brands are missing out on the 85% of the remaining inventory that is out there. That is, call it the long tail or the smaller podcasters or the network buys, or call it however you want. But it's something that is currently still untapped. And I think if we want this industry to grow, ad tech players, podcasters, and advertisers will need to work together to make sure that there is some brand safety around that network buy, that long tail. And we spoke about the technologies that are available. And I think this is what is going to bring scale to podcasts in the future.
And on that note, as our kind of last question, where would you like to see brand safety in audio or podcasting, say this time next year? What would you like to see change?
I think there will. All right. There will need to be a lot of different players are building their own technology, in their corner, and making it available to their advertisers. I think if we want to convince advertisers that it is a brand safe environment, there will need to be some standardization. Industry players will have to come together, will have to come up with standard solutions that they're able to offer. And I think advertisers have a role to play there as well. They need to test it out. They need to work together with the podcasters, with the publishers, with the ad tech players, just to make sure that we bring these technologies to allow for a brand safe environment all together as an industry.
Great. Thank you so much, Brieuc.
Thank you, Ella.
Thank you, everyone.